You're listening to Covering the Field with your host, Joe Ellison.
Hello, sports fans. Welcome to Covering the Field, the weekly program that analyzes all sports, handicaps them, and makes and reviews predictions. I'm your host, Joe Ellison, and today we'll talk about football, the Olympics, baseball, hockey, and our You Got Hose segment. And we'd like to remind you listeners to email us at coveringthefield@gmail.com. Give us your feedback, your You Got Hose moments, and any other comments you'd like to give us. But first, we're going to touch on a few different subjects with our sports expert, Charles O'Loughlin. How are you doing today, Charles?
I'm excellent, Joe. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. So, Charles, the National Football League training camps have opened up. And yes, quarterback Aaron Rodgers showed up for work in Green Bay. But what kind of stories have caught your eye so far?
Quite a few, Joe. I think the situation with Deshaun Watson and the Texans now fielding offers for him is pretty interesting. I think as an organization, you got to be a little smarter than that and strike when the iron's hot. I would have liked to seen what they could have got for him before all these allegations went down. The Aaron Rodgers situation is interesting because they recently traded for Randall Cobb today, and Devontae Adams, their number one wide receiver, is not, ended talks on the negotiations of a new contract. I think that's interesting. But, I have to go towards the NFC West and what's happening out there and all this hype around the 49ers. That's what's got me kind of scratching my head right now.
Well, what's about the 49ers that they're saying?
Steve Mariucci is saying that the 49ers have one of the best football teams in the NFL, and he expects them to be able to win a Super Bowl. Colin Cowherd the other day rated every team in the NFC. He had the Rams and the Hawks both going 11-6 is what it would be this year.
Yep, 17 games.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 11-6. The Niners going 9-8, and the Cardinals going 8-9. And he said the Cardinals would be the best 8-9 team in the NFL. And even though he has the Niners going 9-8, he could see them winning the Super Bowl. Which blows my mind, Joe, because the Niners team is going to be now 2 years removed from their Super Bowl run. And we're going to play a little trivia question, Joe. Kyle Shanahan, this is going to be his 5th year as the Niners coach, right? He's got 4 years under his belt. How many winning seasons? We don't even have to go winning seasons. How many 500 seasons or better do you think?
I counted one. One,
and that's their Super Bowl winning season. Other than that, Shanahan in 2017, 6-10. 2018, 4-12. 2019, their magical Super Bowl run, 13-3. 2020, 6-10. This guy's double-digit losses every single year, other than the year that his team got hot.
Well, they're probably looking more at the roster. People are expecting those players to go off, although I do question quarterback.
Okay, so we're going to question quarterback Jimmy Garoppolo, who hasn't stayed healthy for a season. So you're going to tell me Trey Lance is a guy that's played one football game in 2 years is going to carry you to the Super Bowl? How about your wide receivers that can't do anything but run a slant route? Where's your defense going to come from? You're trusting a kid in Nick Bosa who's coming off an ACL tear, who had injury problems when he was a Buckeye. You lost DeForest Buckner. You lost the Thomas kid. Saloon Thomas, is that how you say his first name?
Solomon Thomas.
Solomon Thomas. Richard Sherman's gone. That secondary got weaker. Well, where do they get these? What are they seeing that we're not seeing?
I don't know, Charles, but we're going to make predictions later on in a couple of weeks or so, and I'm going to figure that the 49ers are not going to be on your playoff list?
They are not on my playoff list, and I will tell you what, any listeners out there that have a little spare change, just go to my GoFundMe that I started for Niners fans a couple days ago. It's to help them get their heads out of their rectums. They can't see a damn thing. Yesterday I was driving down Carson Street, and I saw my buddy, and I've told him time and time again, I feel so bad for him. He drives a really nice truck. He has shit all in the back of his truck, and I've told him, bro, you have shit on the back of your truck. Still there. I let him go about, half a mile in front of me because I have to share the road with this guy. And it absolutely scares me that I have to share the road with these 49er fans that have their head up their rectums.
Tell us how you really feel, Charles. So, Charles, changing subjects now. Commissioner Roger Goodell sent a message to all the teams saying that if a squad contracts COVID to the point it can't play a certain week, and juggling the schedule is found to be impossible, then that club forfeits the game, and neither that team nor its opponent gets paid. What do you think of that?
Pretty crazy. Pretty crazy.
I have to say, hey, the team that contracts the COVID, they forfeit. They don't get paid, but why penalize the team that doesn't have COVID? What's the thinking behind that, you think?
I couldn't even tell you, because what happens if everybody in the NFL gets vaccinated and someone still catches a COVID case, which has been the case. We saw it with Chris Paul, who had the vaccination and still caught COVID. So it doesn't make that much sense to me.
It makes zero sense to me, too, and hopefully they can revisit that. So, Charles, you wanted to take a minute to say something about player appreciation?
Yeah, thank you, Joe. So, with this new Space Jam coming out, there's been bobbleheads of LeBron James, and the people have been peeling the head off, to make little memes or videos about it to disrespect him. There, he has I guess you would say, a portrait in Akron that got defaced. It says La Flop on it, and I just want to point out that, and we've had this discussion before about how you were not a huge SC fan. So, you don't mind if Reggie Bush and Matt Leinart get their, I think, was it the Rose Bowl that they went for that year that they ended up winning? And, Reggie Bush getting stripped of his Heisman, you really don't care because, you're not an SC guy. You've knocked one of my favorite players, Kevin Durant, a few times, and I just want to express my feelings towards people that I hope that people can sit back and really appreciate a player, because one day we're going to wake up and you might not like the person because they helped create super teams or they left the team to join a super team, or you may think they have cheated or whatever. I completely understand, but one day you're going to wake up and there's not going to be a LeBron James dominating the court. There's not going to be a KD dropping 40, hitting a buzzer beater 35 feet back, fading away with two defenders on him. There's not going to be a Reggie Bush running down the sideline, juking with the ball behind his back, throwing. I mean, when I saw that, my jaw dropped to the ground. So I just hope that as fans, we can understand, or I can help guide someone to, I understand if you hate a team. Trust me, I have 49er toilet paper, and I have a Seahawks sticker on the bottom of my toilet bowl. Trust me. No, I understand if you don't like teams, but when it comes to players, I hope, and I just want to guide people to appreciate what they put out there, because, and that's one thing, I was not a LeBron guy early on in his career until I had this conversation with a basketball junkie, an older fellow who followed Mike and all these guys. And he's like, one day you're going to talk about these guys, and wherever you think they ranked on their greatness, they are part of the history of the game, and they did have great moments. And I hope people can appreciate what a player puts out and the greatness that they put into the game and the history they help bring to the game.
Thank you, Charles.
You're welcome, Joe.
We're going to switch over to college sports now. The big story this week is the future move of Oklahoma and Texas from the Big 12 to the Southeastern Conference. Oklahoma and Texas are not renewing their Big 12 media rights, which expire in 2025. But if they pay $75 to $80 million, they can get out of the conference sooner. This has Oklahoma State University fuming, saying this is a clear breach of Big 12 bylaws and a terrible move for the entire state of Oklahoma. Charles, what's your take on that situation?
Pretty crazy. How much money are you going to help donate this to this Mr. OU to help them get out of their contract?
I have an answer to that, and it's going to be zero. First, I'm going to ask you, Charles, is this the right move for Oklahoma and Texas, in your opinion?
Yes and no. I think the Big 12 has a lot of history. There's a lot of rival games with OSU, Texas, OU. When I think of the Big 12, I think Oklahoma fits it perfectly. It's a school, it's a conference that defense, what is that? Let's just go play pretty boy ball, throw the ball 100 times, rack it up 70-70. The last person with possession wins. I think it will be good when it comes to recruiting. They'll be able to recruit a little bit better. They'll be able to recruit a little bit more. Other than that, I don't like the thought of breaking up the division or the conferences like that and people joining the SEC. The SEC is a very high class, and you're going to realize really quickly that a lot of that pretty boy ball that flies in the Big 12 isn't going to fly in the SEC because you're coming across an NFL football player every week.
I will say the defense did start to get a little better at the end of the year last year. We'll see if that carries over to next year.
Who did they play at the end of the year?
Florida in the bowl.
Okay, that's not bad. Okay.
They beat them by about 10 points. But, inside their conference, not so much, right. But obviously this move is all about football. And the ultimate goal, of course, is winning a national championship. And yes, I'm an Oklahoma fan. I would just rather they stay in the Big 12. So I'm not going to donate anything to the move. They win the conference there almost every year, and that's a lot easier road to the 14 playoff. A one-loss Big 12 champion should get in the Final Four. I guess I'd rather be the biggest fish in a medium pond than a medium fish in the biggest pond. But if there's an expansion to the playoff system to 12 or even 8 teams, it shouldn't matter. Oklahoma would get in most years anyway. So, hey, if they got to the top of the SEC, naturally, they'd be where Alabama is now. That would be amazing.
Now, I got a question for you, Joe. How would you think Lincoln Riley would stack up to against SEC coaches? Because it's not just about the talent you put on the field.
That's something to be seen. We don't know.
Do you think he could recruit with those good SEC programs?
I absolutely think he can, for sure, at quarterback.
Okay.
And he's had a couple Heisman Trophy winners, one that came in second. I think, the NFL teams have been calling for him to coach there. So why not the SEC? I think he's a better coach than most of the SEC coaches right now. I can only think of maybe one or two that he's not as good as, so I think he'd stack up pretty well, personally. So, Charles, do you think that would be the end of the Big 12 if Oklahoma and Texas leave? Incidentally, though, the Big 12 currently has 10 teams and the Big 10 has 14, so we're just to make things clear for everybody. But do you think that's it for the Big 12?
It'd be tough for them to stay competitive. They'd have OSU left in there. They'd have Kansas State,
is in there.
West Virginia,
Iowa State,
yeah. Iowa's not in there.
No,
Iowa?
they're in the Big 10.
Yeah, that's what I thought. It'd be really hard for them to be competitive. You'd want to probably take them into other conferences or maybe other schools come into their conference, step up in the game. Maybe you try to get a Houston. I'm trying to think maybe you go get a Memphis. But I don't know. But there we go to the problem again. Is I don't know if these schools can recruit, or how bad these kids are going to want to go play football at smaller universities like that are in a bigger conference that are going to lose more often than not against schools that have this history and have proven recruiting talent and can pull these type of kids to their conference. It gets shaky.
Well, it's if it's strictly football teams that they're after, there are two that came to mind. Certainly BYU is an independent. got out of the Mountain West. Now they need to go to a better conference.
That one will not be bad.
Yes. And Boise State, of course. They're constantly trying to get into a better conference, and they're stuck in the Mountain West being the best team like every year.
Yeah, maybe Nevada. Nevada's been doing pretty good. I'd like to see it for basketball for sure. I think Nevada's basketball program could keep up with the Big 12. So yeah, but if we're strictly talking football, sure.
Well, yeah. If we were talking basketball, then Houston. You did mention Houston.
Houston
There's
would
a team
be great for the Big 12 ratings. Memphis would be great for the Big 12 ratings because Penny Hardaway's over there as their coach, isn't he?
Yes, he is. Houston just went to the Final Four.
Yeah, you
got Kansas.
So when you talk about switching conferences like that, I know you say strictly football, but you have to think of everything else that's going to go with you. And I think that would be good for OU and Texas's basketball programs too, because in the SEC you're going to see greats like Florida, Tennessee, Auburn's can show up and show out every couple years. So yeah,
We've been talking a little about Arkansas.
35-1. Go grab them.
I already did. I believe in Musselman. So Houston's in the American Athletic Conference now. Right now, maybe, the AAC is going to pick up Big 12 teams.
The ACC?
It's possible. AAC. That's Houston's conference.
Yeah.
Central Florida is in there. A few other decent teams.
Yeah.
Just saying, the Big 12 just might not even exist anymore.
Which would be pretty sad.
That would be very sad. There's another topic I'd like to get to, and since you're such a large basketball fan, it's the U.S. men's Olympic team. We said last week that it wouldn't be a surprise if the U.S. didn't even win a medal, and it wouldn't be a surprise if they won the gold. Charles, after watching a couple games, where do you stand on that subject now?
Yeah. I was having a conversation with our producer, and he reminded me that, the only team that does not play team basketball is usually the Team USA, because it's full of so many studs and guys that just want to show out and get numbers. That's, and that seems what's happening. They're not gelling as a team. And Magic Johnson put out a tweet the other day that's saying Team USA lacking LeBron James is big. And, that goes back to my player appreciation thing. Say what you want about the guy because of his politics or creating the super team or the way he's jumped around the NBA. He's a leader of men. When he's on a court, he takes the bull by the horns, and he knows how to direct players. He knows how to win basketball games. He knows he's been tried and true in, big time situations. So when you're missing players like that, it's very unfortunate, and it can come to get you. Because in basketball, Popovich is a great coach, but coaching can only get you so far to what you put on the court.
Well, now we got, instead of those guys that you mentioned, we've got JaVale McGee on the team. Keldon Johnson, I must confess, I never even heard of Keldon Johnson. You probably had. McGee, you were saying guys that bounce around the league aren't very good. McGee's been on like 7 different teams.
Yeah. And then you have Booker coming on, which, I don't know how that loss is taken to him. There's a lot. There's a lot there right now.
Well, how do you think we do? Do we get a medal?
9 times out of 10, when it comes to basketball, the better team will win. Talent will just come through and show out. So I would like to say yes, but then when you got other teams that you have, Luka is playing on the what team is he on
It's
right
the
now?
Slovenian
team. When you got guys like that are playing for their country and going out and having a good time, and they're just balling. Sometimes it can be tough to play against those guys because, USA is going to have a lot of attitude on that court. And when they're not winning and things aren't going their way, players can butt heads, So I think we will pull off some type of medal, but I don't know if this is our year to come out on top, unfortunately.
I'm going to go out on a limb and say we don't medal, 4th place. We lose the bronze medal game. If we even get that far, we'll see. Charles, you did mention Greg Popovich. How much do you think he's to blame for the U.S.'s struggles?
Not much. He's a great coach. Like I said, there's only so much you can do as a coach when coaching a basketball because it's what your products you put on the floor. I wouldn't want his job. I could only imagine putting up with that many superstars, that many egos. It's tough because when you don't have a guy in the room like LeBron, Steph, we said Steph has never been there, but when you don't have those type of guys that are leaders that know how to take a team into their hands, it can be tough dealing with egos.
Yeah, well, the media, some of the members of the media have been going after Popovich. I think it's pretty unfair. That was after they lost to France. France was the first team that was put together. The U.S. was the last. U.S. had only one practice with all its team members before the tournament began. It's not Popovich's fault. Most of his best players aren't there or just got there.
Absolutely.
So, one final subject to cover with you. The NBA draft is tomorrow. Any thoughts on the draft, Charles?
Super excited about it. Super excited. There's, Cade Cunningham's going to go number 1 is what it's looking like. Jalen Green is going to go number 2, who I actually think is the better prospect with the higher ceiling. Cade's 6'8", Jalen I think is 6'5", 6'4", 6'5". They're both points. Cade's a little longer, but he's not as quick. Really good defender. Mobley's going to go 3rd probably, and then we'll see how it shakes out from there. I watched Jalen Green. I think it's almost going to be like a couple years ago when it was the Pelicans and the Grizzlies. I think the Pistons are going to get a good player in Cade, just like the Pelicans did in Zion. I think the Rockets will get the better long-term prospect in Jalen Green, which could team up with John Wall. Super stoked. But before I get out of here, Joe, I just want to tell you, watch out for the Detroit Pistons in a couple years. They're building a really good squad out there. If they get Cade, if they go Jalen, switch it up, throw everybody for a surprise. In a couple years, these Pistons are going to be something to mess around with. They have Sadiq Bey, who's an awesome defender in college. He could guard 1 through 5. In the NBA, he can guard 1 through 4. They have Isaiah Stewart out there, who's going to be who's a solid number 5. And if they do end up drafting Cade, every one of their starting 5 will be over 6'8", which is pretty amazing. That's big in the NBA.
Well, size definitely matters in the NBA.
That's what they all say.
Thank you, Charles, for covering the hot topics in today's sports world. And we'll catch you next time.
All right, Joe, you have a good one, boss.
Next up, it's about time we talk about some Major League Baseball. I'd like to introduce our new baseball expert, Ronnie McKinnon. How are you doing today, Ronnie?
Good, Joe. How you doing?
Doing terrific. Now, if we're going to talk baseball, Ronnie, we have to start by talking about the National League West. Going into today's games, surprising San Francisco is up 3 games over the Los Angeles Dodgers and 5.5 over San Diego. What's been happening and what's going to happen in the NL West?
Well, the Giants are doing way better than anybody thought they would do, including their fans, and for this long. So it's for real. We're at about 100 games. So it's the Dodgers and San Diego they're going to be there. They're going to be fighting this thing all the way to the end, and they all have good teams. And we'll see what happens as they're still going to play each other. The Dodgers Giants will play each other 5 more times. And San Diego and San Francisco, I think, have about 9 left with each other. Because they play each other 19 times in your division. So.
Well, Ronnie, we are in the prediction business here. Do you have a prediction as to who's going to win the division?
Well, I do think the Dodgers will, and that could be part of that is I'm a huge Dodger fan, but I really think they have all the talent to do it. Obviously, right now, missing Kershaw, who will be back this next week. They're missing Bauer because of what he's going through with the sexual assault thing, which is not proven yet. That really hurt us a lot. So. And we still haven't had Seager most of the year, and we've had some other injuries. And but I think in the end they will. They'll be there. They'll win the division.
Well, believe it or not, the Dodgers are favored, even though they're behind the Giants. They're minus 200. That's 20 to win 10. Kind of a surprise to me. The Giants plus 240. That's right, Giants fans. Still plus 240 to win the division, if you want to go get some of that. Now, in the NL Central, Milwaukee was 7 games clear of Cincinnati, St. Louis, and the Chicago Cubs. Ronnie, is anyone catching Milwaukee?
No, I don't think so. I really don't.
What makes Milwaukee so great?
Well, they've got great pitching, no doubt. Very good pitching. And I just think, yeah, they're just better than the other teams. And I don't think Cincinnati's doing better than was expected. Actually, they started off good, then they went down. Now they're coming back a little bit. Yeah, I think Milwaukee will win that division.
It sure seems like it. The books have got them minus 1,000. That's $10 to win $1 on Milwaukee at this moment. In the NL East, the New York Mets, Philadelphia, and Atlanta all appear to have a shot. Do you see it that way?
Yes, I do. They, especially New York, they haven't played quite as many games as everybody. They when the season started, a lot of the games were delayed with them. But yeah, I think all of them will be there actually.
Well, right now the Mets are minus 210. They're the big favorite. You got the Phillies 3-1 and Braves 7-1.
Yeah, I think. Well, the Braves losing Acuna Jr. was big, and sad to see that happen. So I think that it's going to be tough. The Phillies are just playing around 500 all year, and I think their fans and everybody else expected them to do way better the last several years. But right now, the Mets, look like they have the better team, but there's still a ways to go. So.
Okay. Well, now the 2 wild cards almost certainly will come out of the West. What do you think about the 1-game wild card playoff system?
Hate it. Don't like it at all. You got 2 teams that just gonna miss, coming in first, probably, and they end up having to play 1 game, after the whole season. It's just not right. They should play at least 2 out of 3. I'd say 3 out of 5, because anything can happen in 1 game.
Well, the argument, I guess, would be if they do play 3 games or 5 games, then the other teams that aren't playing are resting too much.
Well, sure, that happens, and that happens also when a team sweeps somebody, and the team they're going to play goes 5 or 7 games. They end up waiting a long time anyway. I don't think that's part of it myself.
Well, it seems the wild card winner would then next play the winner of the NL West. Now, back in the old days, you couldn't play a team from your same division in the first round of the playoffs. Which format would you be in favor of? The way I would like it, where you can't play a team from your own division in the first round, or do you automatically put the wild card team against the best team?
Yes, I think that's what should happen. I do. The division teams, they play each other 19 times during the regular season, and so I don't think it's like, oh, we play them too much or not enough. I think the seed thing, the best team playing the lowest seed team, or the wild card team.
But we could very well be in a position where the wild card team has a better record than one of the division winners.
That's true.
So it wouldn't necessarily be the worst team is the wild card team.
Well, yeah, worst team, I'm saying, but you're right that they could have a better record. That's very true.
Well, it's not going to change. We're going to see another West battle in the wild card, and then in the series, and then we'll be down to only one West team remaining, which will kind of be sad for me. But moving on to the American League, the East seems to be the strongest division in all of baseball, with 4 teams above 500. Boston and Tampa Bay are clear of the Yankees, New York Yankees, and Toronto. Who wins that division?
Well, I think Boston has been a big surprise, kind of like the Giants in the National League. They weren't expected to do this well. It's 100 games in, and they've been there all year, and they have a good team. And the Yankees have been disappointing. They were expected to do much better, and I still think they're going to be there. Tampa Bay is just really strong. I think Boston, Tampa Bay, and the Yankees will all still be there towards the end. Toronto, not so much.
Well, you're going to have to make a prediction. Like I said, we're in the prediction business. It sounds like you're picking between Boston and Tampa Bay, which it appears that's going to be the way it goes.
I actually think it'll end up being Tampa Bay.
All right. Well, that's going to be sad for all the Boston fans out there.
Right, and I've always liked Boston. I've always been a Boston fan for the American League, but I really think Tampa Bay will win that division.
In the West, Houston is suddenly up by 6 games over Oakland and 7 over Seattle. Is anyone catching the Astros?
Yes, I mean, Oakland they started off 0-6, and then they went on I think they won 8 in a row, and then they've been kind of back and forth. But I think they're a good team, and I think they're still going to battle Houston. Seattle's doing much better than they expected to, or people expected them to do. But I think it'll be between Houston and Oakland in the end, and I would have to say I would pick Houston.
Yeah, Dusty Baker managing that team. Up for
not a fan, but
manager of the year.
Right.
Former great Dodger player.
Right, he was a Dodger player, and just a lot of battles when he was a Giant manager, and of course Dodger Giant rivalry. But
well, I'm an A's fan, and I've been watching the season, well, at least their games, and they can't seem to beat Houston or Seattle a whole lot. So I'm worried about them, but they are 1 game up on the wild card, so that gives them a shot. In what appears to be the worst division in baseball, the AL Central, the Chicago White Sox are the only team above 500. Is that division a done deal?
Yeah, I think Chicago, the White Sox, they've been getting there closer every year, and I think they will win that division.
And that's Tony La Russa.
That's correct. That's right. Been around a while.
And another guy up for manager of the year. Kind of a surprise to see the old guys managing so well, or pretty much expected?
Yeah, it's not surprising to me. No, I don't think so.
For the wild card, it seems either Boston or Tampa Bay will get 1 spot. Who do you think gets the other one? Well, I said Oakland, but I'm an A's fan, so I mean,
right.
You got Seattle 1 game back of them, and
yeah, I would say
you got some Yankees and are in the mix.
Yeah, well, again, the Yankees aren't doing near as well as, but it's not over yet. But I think between Oakland and New York, I would probably end up saying that I'd probably put my money on New York to. I don't bet on baseball, but I would probably put my money on New York to end up being there.
Well, finally, Ronnie, now we need a World Series prediction. Who meets in the World Series and who ultimately wins it?
Well, as a Dodger fan, that's what I would want. I think in the end they still are the best team, but there's just a lot more teams this year that are good. And besides San Diego and San Francisco, I mean, Milwaukee, great pitching. And then the other division, the Mets, and I'm not too concerned about that. Now the American League, Boston, Tampa Bay, and the White Sox, and Houston. So there's nothing would really surprise me, but I'm going to say we get the Dodgers get healthy and get all their pitching back, or the trade deadline is here at 4 o'clock Eastern on Friday in a couple days, and some things have already happened, and there's going to be a lot more happening in the next few days. So that'll be interesting.
Maybe we can get a better prediction from you next week, possibly, on the American League. Yes, the trade deadline is coming. Who do you think is on the move, and where is he going?
Well, Max Scherzer is the big one from Washington, and I think he's going somewhere. Right now, he wants to go to a West Coast team, so we're talking the Giants, the Padres, or the Dodgers. He also has the 10-5 rule, which means he's been in the majors for 10 years and on the same team for 5, so he can veto any trade. So he basically can choose where he wants to go. And those are the 3 teams he wants to go to. So,
any rumor on where you think he's going to go? Have you heard anything?
No, just a few hours ago, there was a couple more quick trades of some prominent players, but I think the Scherzer thing will happen, could happen tonight or tomorrow before the deadline. It's the GM for the Padres can make some deals. He's shown that already. So I won't predict where. I'm hoping he goes to the Dodgers, but it wouldn't surprise me if he went to San Diego or even the Giants.
So the Cleveland Indians are changing their name to the Guardians. Why?
Well, we know all about the teams changing the
well, not
the
so
names.
much why, not the Indians, but why the Guardians?
Well, I wasn't sure either, and I did some research on that. And the Guardians is there's a bridge in Cleveland called the Guardians of Traffic, and it's like 43 feet high and 100 years old. And it's the Hope Memorial Bridge. So they decided that the Guardians of Traffic, which is that bridge, is what they would name it after.
So what do you think of the name, the Guardians?
Well, that gets into the whole thing about switching everybody's names, which I don't agree with. So I don't.
You were okay just keeping things status quo, the way they were.
Exactly. I don't think it's a put down at all of American Indians, and so I don't agree with it. But
okay, well, my question is it too late to rechange the name? Because I'm not fond of Guardians. The Guardians, I think, would sound like a good name for a hockey team, kind of like you're guarding the goal, kind of, at least. But Guardians for baseball just doesn't do it for me. But anyway.
Well, they did do some research or some asking people over time what they thought and what they and ultimately that's what they decided was Guardians.
Thank you, Ronnie, for your insight. You're our baseball guy. There's a lot of subjects we need to talk about in the future about the baseball season. It's heating up. I'm looking forward to having you back again.
Well, thanks for having me, Joe. It was a pleasure to be here. I really enjoyed it, and I look forward to next time.
Thank you. That was Ronnie McKinnon. Our final guest today is our Olympics and hockey expert, Gator Gates. How are you doing today, Gator?
Oh, I'm doing great, Joe. Thank you for having me.
Gator, there are still plenty of Olympic events that handicappers can wager on. I don't know, have any of them caught your eye?
Well, like I predicted before, the women's field hockey, Netherlands are at a -125. That was the best one that I saw today. that I felt more confident on.
So we're going to bet on the Netherlands.
Netherlands women's field hockey.
Nice. You got some inside info on that.
Well, I just liked the price when they started. They were at a plus money. They were at plus money when they first started, and they're still at a minus 125, so I think that's still a great price for being, there is no sure thing or a lock, but they should. The one that I thought was going to win, the women's softball, they got the silver, but I thought that they were a sure lock.
Yeah, they ran into Japan.
Correct.
Yes, and Japan won the last Olympics also, so not a total surprise, but yet a surprise.
Yes, correct.
For me, it's not too hard. Novak Djokovic is my man. I've been singing his praises since the French Open when he beat Rafael Nadal. He's gunning for the Golden Slam. That's all 4 majors and the gold medal in the same year. Only Steffi Graf in 1988 has done it. So that's a definite goal. Last I checked, Djokovic was at minus 250, so the odds weren't terrific, but he looks like a really good pick.
Well, as far as odds go, I really like Shefley for the golf, and especially with Rahm and DeChambeau not going to be there. He's at 17-2.
Golf, as we know, is so difficult to win, to pick the tournament.
Yes, it is, correct.
I didn't see any matchups yet either. So, do you know?
Neither did I.
Okay. So that might be the time to bet as the matchups, the one-on-one, as opposed to trying to win the whole tournament. But the tournament doesn't start for a few more days, right?
Yes, correct. And the other thing I like about matchups, if they do bring them out, is that you can parlay them.
That's the way to go, without a doubt.
That's what I think. And that's why I like them so much.
Either parlay, in my opinion, parlay the minuses, maybe round robin the pluses. It's a good strategy,
Very
good
wise,
betting
yes,
strategy. So, Gator, are there any stories that have intrigued you during these Olympics?
Well, I have 3 little tidbits, I guess. In the U.S. men's water polo, Jesse Smith, who was the captain, missed the opening ceremonies. They were only allowed to have 12 athletes, and the USA team had 13. Jesse wasn't too upset, though. This was his first Olympics, and he said in an interview he would rather have somebody that hasn't been there, and he would just sit out. So that was very nice of him. Another thing, as long as we're on the water polo, the women's water polo, 12 dozen different players are going to nearly split $14 million. Coach was accused of sexual harassment. And the other one that I have is in rowing. The Russian rowers failed a drug test, 2 of them. They were replaced before the team was even announced, but they were using meldonium. And that was made in 1970 by the Soviets, and it was used for a sports enhancement drug. And it was banned in the 2016 Olympics, and that is the exact same thing that Sharapova served a 15-month ban for after she tested positive after those Olympics.
Yes, for years and years, meldonium was legal. Then, just recently, it was made into a banned substance. Sharapova continued to use it and got in trouble. Now nobody is getting in trouble. Well, people now are getting in trouble for it, but they shouldn't be because everyone knows now it's illegal.
Correct.
I noticed that 2 of our first goals were in rifle and fencing. It's good to know that the U.S. is still great for shooting things and stabbing people. But one prevailing theme that has bothered me is the United States media's attitude about winning gold medals. In many countries, if you come away with a bronze medal in an event, you're worshipped. Here, many times you win a silver medal, like Hall of Fame swimmer Katie Ledecky, or like you mentioned, the women's softball team, you're considered a loser. And the media's asking you what went wrong. I mean, wow, Gator, are we really that spoiled?
Well, what I'd like to say, Joe, is I think that we should be proud of all our athletes, female, male. It's a lot of pressure when you stick that USA on the back of your shirt. There's all kinds of teams that want to come out and just beat the crap out of you. So that is a lot of pressure. I'd also like to thank the parents of the athletes, especially my parents. I know they sacrifice a ton to take those kids down there every day, every week. And if it wasn't for you guys, I wouldn't be sitting here with Joe giving out my opinions. So I really want to thank every parent out there very, very much.
Well, that's true. Winning gold medals is not really what the Olympics is all about. It's really about that 46-year-old gymnast from Uzbekistan competing in her 8th and final Olympics. And it's about that U.S. triathlete that survived cancer in order to just compete. In our major team sports, they say there's always next year, but in the Olympics, it's once every 4 years. This time it was 5 because of COVID. And you're right, there's a lot of sacrifices made. The athletes, their families, and you can see it gets super emotional.
Yes, it does, very much so.
I love watching the Olympics.
Yeah, me too, Joe.
So finally, I would like to wish our best to the greatest of all time gymnast, Simone Biles, and anyone else who suffers from mental health issues. If you've experienced them or know someone who has, you know this is no joke. So Gator, I thought we were done talking about hockey about 2 weeks ago, but you being here and being our hockey expert, there are a couple of subjects that we need to address. First of all, the Seattle Kraken had their expansion draft last week. How did the Kraken do, and why didn't they take Montreal goaltender Carey Price like Vegas did 4 years ago when they chose Pittsburgh goalie Marc-Andre Fleury?
I would think it would have to do with their salary. I also, like I've said many times on this program, Price, he has his moments where he looks just knocked out like a Bordeaux or Patrick Waugh. Then there's other times that he looks like a really good goalie. I really am excited about Seattle getting a hockey team, and I'm not upset that they didn't take him. They need to build. I think people have this high standard that when Vegas picks their team, then they go to the Stanley Cup their first year. Again, that's like the Olympic athletes. We're putting these expectations on too high. You can't go out there and just expect to spend all this money, and you got to build for a long term, is kind of what I'm saying. And I think that they did really well. I would have liked to seen Landeskog. I'm a huge Avalanche fan, and I would have loved to seen him taking Landeskog. But then again, you're taking all the salary away, and you want to build for the future. Now, what I'm really excited about is that their first home game is against Vancouver.
That's going to be the natural rivalry.
Oh, that's great. It's already a rivalry, and they haven't even touched the ice.
Well, I'm going to throw you a little trivia.
Okay.
Seattle will be attempting to win their first Stanley Cup in how many years? And what was their name? Yes, Seattle has won a Stanley Cup before.
I don't know their name, Joe. I'm going to say it was in the 20s.
Very close. It was the Seattle Metropolitans won the Stanley Cup in 1917. So Seattle that was 105 years ago. That's a long time.
Oh, yes. Very.
They've waited a long time to win another Stanley Cup.
No, that city deserves it, Joe. Seattle is a sports town.
It was basically coming down to Seattle and Quebec. But obviously the province of Quebec already has a team, Montreal. So Seattle probably made more sense.
Well, as far as expansion in hockey, I think the NHL is trying to get more countries. They're talking about having a team in, of all places, Mexico City.
That would be totally bizarre.
Yes, it would. They want some in Russia. So when I start thinking this way, okay, how's this going to work? This year was really unique in where we just played within our divisions. We didn't play in conference or play and all that. If it worked as well as I think it did for the COVID, they can use that same system have a division in Russia, have a division for the rest of Europe, have division in, I don't know, southern part of the Americas, because you got to put Mexico in there, and they could play with Nashville and all them, and then have Minnesota playing with Canadians.
That seems like, to me, that we're a lot of years away from that happening, but the Mexico part. But I could definitely see a team in Europe. Certainly.
A lot of teams. I could see a couple of divisions in Europe.
That's something to be talked about. I hadn't heard that. The other subject we need to talk about, of course, is Vegas just trading Fleury, the aforementioned Fleury, to the Chicago Blackhawks. Here's the reigning Vezina Trophy winner, best goalie in the league, being traded. And the way he finds out he got traded is on Twitter. He's making $7 million on the last year of his contract, but he's now thinking about retiring. Gator, what do you think of the way Vegas treated Fleury?
I like it where you go and you talk face to face with people, and you make a deal that way. If you can't make a deal, then you go your separate ways. To do it the way that Vegas did it, I just think that was a cop-out in my eyes.
It did seem pretty gutless. When they brought him in, he was like a savior, and the fans were so excited.
He also deserves a lot more than that. Just like you said, the fans were excited. He's got that. He took them to the Stanley Cup. Not just him, the whole team, but he helped them take them to the Stanley Cup. And then to treat him like that, not the fact that he's going to Chicago. That I kind of really like that. I think that put Chicago right there. But yeah, it's kind of slap in the face, I think. I would take it as that. I don't know how Fleury feels, but that's how I would take it. If he doesn't want to play, that's up to him too. He's been in the league forever. Nobody's going to think less of him.
No, he was just traded for a minor leaguer also. Nothing substantial at this point.
Another smack in the face.
Yes, this Vegas front office doesn't seem like a very friendly bunch. It's possible, players just might not want to go there now, some of them, just because of the way they might be treated.
I wouldn't blame them, Joe.
And finally, it's time for the moments we've all been waiting for. The stories that make us go crying to our mommies about bets that look like winners, but in the end, something went horribly wrong, and then ended up being losers. It's the segment we affectionately call, You Got Hosed.
You got hosed.
Sean, do you have a really good You Got Hosed segment? I know you don't. I'm a really got hosed story. I know you don't bet yourself, but maybe you heard one.
Well, the one that I came up with this week, Joe, was in the men's triathlon. And what the triathlon is, it's actually 3 events in one. It's swimming, then cycling, and then running. Now, 56 men lined up at the start of the race. And as the starter blew his horn, there was a media boat that was blocking 1/3 of the contestants. Now, the mini boats were rushing to cut off the divers that already dove into the water and were running, or swimming actually. And what happened was they were trying to catch him, but there was 2 jet skis that actually got to him and stopped him. And while all this was going on, the starter was blowing the horn the whole time that the boats were trying to get these guys to stop. Well, they did actually swim about 200 meters before they got stopped, and they had to swim all the way back to the starting gate. So I would have to say that over two-thirds of the contestants in that race got hosed.
Sorry to hear that, but I did see that. But I didn't really have one this week. Nothing really terrible happened. But they say you always remember your first. So I was 18 or so, and my parents would make bets for me. And I took Penn State on 6 different 3-teamers in a football game. Everything else hits. They're down by 1. All they have to do is win. 30 seconds left. A running back is going clear to the end zone. The hand comes out of the pile, trips him at the 1. Okay, clock runs down. Field goal wins it. Sure enough, the field goal gets blocked. I lose all 6 bets. I learned right then, never put the same team on multiple parlays, and I never have since.
But Joe, you put the same one on every team, that's idiotic.
Well, I didn't when I was 18 years old.
Well, yeah, that's true when you're 18, but yes.
So that was our You Got Host segment. This is the time where our producer decides who's the winner for this week. And he's tabulating, and he appears to be ready.
Thanks, Joe. Well, man, those are both terrible You Got Host stories, or they're good You Got Host stories. They're just terrible situations. I'm going to go this week, though. You both got hosed. I can't decide between both of these. I mean, you're swimming. This is Olympics. It's professionalism. What is happening there? And then the second one, you take, first of all, never take the same team on all your parlays, and you lose that. All your parlays are gone. Oh, man, you both got hosed. So I'm declaring 2 winners this week. Both of you won. You both have terrible, terrible You Got Host stories.
You got hosed.
So that's it for this week. I'd like to thank my guests, Charles O'Laughlin, Ronnie McKinnon, Gator Gates, and our producer, our engineer, our editor, and everyone for listening. Hopefully you all enjoyed the show. We'd like to remind you listeners to email us at coveringthefield@gmail.com. Give us your feedback, your Yous Got Hose moments, any other comments you'd like to give us. And you'll hear us again next week on another episode of Covering the Field.
You've been listening to Covering the Field, a CM World Services and Lesage production.